Right, good morning everyone. Welcome to this Martin Audio webinar. Today's a special one because we have sound engineer and sound designer Simon Honywill with us. Simon's got a lot of experience in the industry and is a all-round sonic guru. So he's going to give us a webinar on festival sound and a whole bunch of his experience today. If you have any questions, probably easier to wait till the end, but I will be online to try and answer any questions if I can. But obviously, Simon is going to have a lot more of a clue about what he's talking about than I am. So I will hand over to you, Simon.
Hello, welcome to another one in the series of Martin Audio webinars. I've called this one Zen and the Art of Festival Audio because I think this whole lockdown thing, if of course you've not been affected by the nasty bug, is all a bit zen. It's very gentle and lovely, and we've got time to do things like webinars and stuff like that, and learn and build sheds, bake bread, learn to play the bassoon, and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, we're going to be talking about festival audio and just about general approaches and ideas, and it's going to be a bit of a general overview with a few kind of insights into some of the things that I get up to. So anyway, here we are. Let us, hang on a minute. I'm coming to you live from beautiful sunny Devon, which looks like this at the moment, which can't be bad. I hope it's similar where you are. We've been really, really lucky with the weather, and it's all been very chilled. And here we go. So what we're going to be talking about is Martin Audio and their optimized sound systems, in particular looking at festivals. And there can be no doubt about the fact that with MLA and now Wavefront Precision, the systems have established themselves really well in the festival market all over the world. And here's just a few examples in case you're not familiar. Rock in Rio, which I've been lucky enough to attend with a Martin Audio hat on. There's massive, massive system and a massive gig. These photos don't really do it justice, but sun shining, as we can see. Sziget in Hungary, it's another huge one. Capital Sound, working with the local suppliers there with MLA. British Summertime in Hyde Park, which is a particularly high profile gig with some major acts in very difficult conditions, sonically challenging. Rock in Japan, our friends over there, it's another monster festival, all Japanese artists. In Russia here, in Tula in Russia, in Austria, it's become something that is being recognized as a go-to festival system. That's a big statement, though. I think that, go-to system for some of the world's biggest festivals, but I'd like to just have a look at perhaps why that is. I'd say first and foremost that we are dealing with a sound system that has absolutely outstanding musicality. We have unprecedented control over the system output, which helps not only obviously on-site, but off-site as well. A lot of attention is given to the fact that these systems are controllable in this way. These two factors together is a very powerful combination. It's very difficult, as long as you know what you're doing, of course, to get it wrong. Such is the way that the system comes packaged with the software design and the electroacoustic design. It's very difficult to get it wrong. You get the right array with the right output for every application. And this, as a whole, is something that I think is, yeah, it's really powerful. You get guaranteed results every time. But why is it that, I mean, people who know me know that I bang on about these systems all the time. I do that because, you know, I have kind of been there and done it. I'm in my 41st year in this industry, and I've worked with most systems that anybody's ever managed to come up with. Excuse me, slug of coffee. And you know, with that level of experience, you kind of get to understand what it is about things that make, you know, the subtleties, I suppose, that make something preferable to another. But maybe to try and actually give you a more of an insight into just why I bang on about it all the time, I'd like you just to perhaps just follow me for a minute, because we're going to go on a little trip. Look at that, we're in a field in the middle of nowhere. Let's go in a bit closer, see what we can see. Oh, there we are. It's the pyramid stage. Oh no, it's not. Oh no, there's no. Oh, sorry, no, that's the wrong PA. It's pointing up in the air. That can't be us. I don't know what's going on there. Sorry. Oh, that's more like it. As many of you may know, I'm heavily involved with Glastonbury Festival. I work directly for the festival, or I would have been if we weren't all in lockdown, as a systems consultant, and get involved with all kinds of aspects of audio across the site. Whether or not it's a pyramid gig or stage, or you know, there are many others. If there's anything to do with audio, any audio issues, it's up to me to dive in and see if I can sort things out. But obviously a flagship is the main stage, Glastonbury, the pyramid stage, and we're going to start by looking at this and a few other things across the festival site. It's a major, if you don't know Glastonbury, it's been around a while. I think this picture was taken in 1971, and we can see, I think that was, that looks like a WEM column system stacked up on the stage. I mean, amazing how high it is as well. It must have been really dangerous. But anyway, yeah, 1971, the first festival was in 1970. And it's kind of, I suppose it's kind of established itself as the sort of, you know, the definitive festival. People have stolen the name and the format, and you know, it gets global broadcasting through the BBC, and for any self-respecting band, I think appearing on Pyramid is it's a career-defining moment, and in recent years, you know, all the names you could ever imagine have been there. We would have had Paul McCartney this year. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you know, Glastonbury's the kind of, it's the original. It came after Woodstock, but it was kind of the UK's version, I suppose. And we've had Martin Audio Systems on the Pyramid stage since 2008, which was the Longbow system originally, and then in 2014 we moved to MLA, all of which has been with RG Jones Sound Engineering, providing the system and the crew to support that. But Martin Audio systems are well established right across the site. And as well as the pyramid, we have the Westholt stage, which came to RG's in 2016. We put a big MLAC system in originally, and it upgraded to MLA in 2019. And if depending how time goes, we'll have a look at what happened with that later on in the webinar. John Peel stage, the Independent People's Republic of John Peel, they used another manufacturer, another loudspeaker manufacturer. Can you imagine that? Why would anybody want to do that? MLA last year in 2019, hugely successful, supplied by Stage Audio Services through the Southwest Group, and great time was had by all. On some of the dance stages, the incredible people at Block 9, some of my favorite people, amazingly enough, they used to use another loudspeaker manufacturer as well. But due to various issues, we got involved in 2016 with RGs, and they now have an MLA compact system, which is highly effective, and they love it. And then, of course, in 2019, we had Block 9's new Icon stage, where we put in a 6.1 wave WPL system, again with RGs, and we'll have a look at that later in the webinar. And the Park stage is another one. Park stage is kind of like the fourth stage. That is WALC's system from the Southwest Group. So it's everywhere. There are others too, left field. It's everywhere. I can't remember, to be honest. But we're here to have a look at some detail on some of these systems, and I'm going to talk you through how we approach dealing with the very specific issues that we're faced with on this site, apart from mud. Now, loudspeakers is one thing, and I know that primarily that's what we're here to talk about, but ultimately, all of these things are about people. And I'm sitting here blathering on at you about Glastonbury this and Glastonbury that, but what Glastonbury is all about is the team of people that actually make it happen. And whilst I have a bit of an audience, I just thought it would be an opportunity to maybe try and recognise some of the people who sweat blood over this, and basically they make me look good. But we have Ben Milton, who is the audio crew chief and deals with a lot of the pre-production, the system spec, and basically just running the gig for RGs. Jason Baird is R&D at Martin Audio, and he helps look after the system. His sub-array is particularly effective, and we have on the left Mark Edwards, who is the chief system engineer, and a very fine job he does too. And on the right there is Andy Williamson from RG Jones, one of the directors of RG Jones. And we have Mark Isbister, who is responsible for the amazing Mark Isbister, who is responsible for dealing with all of the band riders and the patch on stage, interfacing with the BBC, and behind him the very sadly missed Steve Watson, who is no longer with us. It's an old photo, that's why Steve's there. But Mark looking very intense. He doesn't normally look that intense. John Carroll, the other director of RG Jones, he really does sweat blood over this. He actually, that makes him look very young. But Glastonbury has made him much older, I'm sure of it. Matt Sussex there with on the left, rigging the PA so it's pointing in the sky, so no change there. Matt works really hard a lot of the time to get the system actually physically built. not only on Pyramid, on Westholtz and everywhere, mats everywhere, all the time. And Becky Pell, the queen of Pyramid stage monitors. And this is just a few of the people who are responsible for making this thing happen and making the entire show that solid that, along with the system design and all the pre-production that goes into it, we have the unprecedented situation of having kind of held the contract, if there was such a thing, for the Pyramid for a very long time now. Well, since 2007, but that's another story. So yeah, it's about people as much as it is about anything else, and it's an opportunity just to say thanks to everyone too. So let's start to have a look at this system in detail. So where do we start? I think asking an expert is always a good idea, and here's the Dalai Lama to tell us what's what. Sometimes, oh, he's gone. Where's he gone? Hang on a minute. That was my joke. The Dalai Lama says silence is sometimes the best answer. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Lama, but in this case, that's just not the way it is, because we're there to make lots of noise, and make lots of noise without upsetting people off site as well. So silence, it may be the answer a lot of the time, but just not in this case. So we'll move on from that, shall we? Thank you very much for your thoughts, though. So just a quick run around the hardware that we're looking at. For the main left-right, we hang 17 MLA with an MLD on the bottom, and the side hangs, which we are looking at. This is the right here, the right array. This is the outside right. Is the same, 17 MLA and 1 MLD. And look, it's that good that even Guy Garvey out of Elbow is pointing out the fact that it sounds amazing. So get on, Guy. One of the more spectacular actual performances in the last, I don't know, 6 years, of whenever it was they were there last. We have some infills, which are kind of actually the root of the whole system. And there's me and my lovely wife, Sarah, checking out what the infills sound like for Lionel Richie. And that was an experience. I can tell you that I think that a lot of engineers, it's all too easy to stand there in your ivory tower at front of house and not get in amongst the great unwashed. But the fact is that down amongst the punters, it actually sounds and feels very different. And Sarah was determined to get up close and personal with Lionel Richie, and dragged me along too. I thought, okay, you know, let's go and have a listen. And it gives you a real feel for what's actually going on, because it is a totally different experience. And that I suppose the up close and personal sort of atmosphere generated by a lot of close bodies, not at the moment, obviously, makes for a very different experience sonically. So yeah, she managed to drag me down the front. It was also made more interesting by the fact that a bloke tried to start a fire next to us, would you believe? And there wasn't even enough room for half a person, let alone a whole person, and the bloke's there lighting a fire on the ground. Whatever floats your boat, I suppose. But yeah, the infills, we fly off. I'm not sure you can actually see them in that picture. Oh, just up in the corner. Maybe, no, maybe not. 4 MLAC aside, we're doing really solid work for those people right down at the very front, getting down and dirty. The mighty subarray. 32 MLX in a broadside cardioid array, 21 forward, 11 back. It's a formidable wall of low frequency power. It's electronically processed to deliver a good solid 100-degree coverage. And yeah, the amount of energy it generates is quite incredible. That quote, Kanye West was flapping my trousers at around 170 meters, was actually me. The sonic energy of the performance was quite astonishing. And yeah, it was physical at around 170 meters away from the stage. Awesome. Moving out into the field, we have the first ring of delays, 4 positions. The nice British summer weather coming in there. On the outer positions here, we're looking at 16 compact. We went for the compact purely because of the wider dispersion. So there's the equivalent one, which you can't really see in that picture on the other side of the field. We'll look more at that in a while. And 2 hangs of 14 MLA on the back of each front of house tower in the center. And yeah, so these are at 110 meters and these are about 78. And then out to the second ring of delays, another 4 positions of 2 of 12 on the outers and 2 of 14. So it's a lot of firepower there. And isn't that a lovely picture? That's great. I like that one. But I think what is worth doing really is examining how the system is actually kind of optimized really to work and give us what we have measured at about 3 dB drop between front of house and the back of the arena, which is about 330 meters. And we are, that, so 3 dB between front and back, and yet still we're managing to keep the noise levels down off site to within the required parameters, which is pretty amazing, really. I'm not going to go into detail on the software because that is for another webinar, of which there are several, I think, planned, but it's worth just looking at what we've done to actually give you an idea of an understanding in general what the software is actually doing before we actually look at how that maps onto the actual arena itself. So we are able with these systems to dictate very precisely, especially when you're considering the wavelengths of sound that which are very long when we talk about the electromagnetic spectrum. We take a slice. So this we're looking here at one of the main hangs, and we're asking it to cover 100 meters. So between here and here, 100 meters. You can see the rise of the terrain there. And that is essentially where we want the sound to go. And beyond that, we are able to dictate what happens as shown in this slide here. So here's our 100 meters of coverage. And here's the bit beyond. And these red and blue areas are, again, for those of you not familiar with the software, these red and blue areas are really important because what we're saying here is that the red area is not we're not too worried about what happens there, but the blue area we're really concerned about, and we really don't want any sound happening here. It's worth mentioning at this point that one of the things that we do is work very closely with the noise monitoring team, and because they are, I suppose, they're the interface between the festival and the local council, which is the Mendip Council. And as is the case with most festivals, there are always going to be people off site who are not happy about the noise disruption. And it's up to us to work with the noise monitoring team to try and accommodate as much as we possibly can them, to give them the least disruption. And what we do with what we can do with the system is essentially set it up in two ways, and with just a click of a mouse we can switch between one coverage scenario to another. And you'll notice up here that we have it's called main left and right HAV, standing for hard avoid, which is this piece in blue. And what we do is program the system to give us the best possible coverage across this 100 meters in the case of the left and right, and then to fall off through the red bit, and then to be as near as possible gone in the blue bit, in simplistic terms. The other powerful thing is that here we're able to regulate, we're able to determine how the sound pressure behaves within the audience area here. So what this is actually telling us is that between the start of the coverage and this yellow triangle, which is the reference point, we have a 2 dB difference. So if this were, for the sake of argument, 100 dB, we'd have 102 here, and then -3, we're losing 3 dB here, so we are at 97 there. And if you ever get the opportunity in a open air environment with still air, which doesn't happen very often, to measure that, you'll be amazed at just how accurate that can be. But we are able to achieve this kind of level of control using this software, and the kind of results it gives us. Look, no, they don't look like this. So this page here tells us how, with this particular scenario where we have the system in the maximum rejection mode, for want of a better description, we can see that with the red, blue, and green, which refers back to the red, blue, and green dots we've just been looking at, we have actually told the software that we want it to focus more of its processing on that hard avoid area. We want it to try and turn the system down by 45 dB, and we've cranked the importance on that to ensure that that has actually happened. And if you look down the bottom here, if you can see this blue line, from about, well, here we go, from 200 hertz upwards, from here to 500, we're down 20, and then it drops away to 40. There's a bit of a bump there, still 20 dB down though. And so you can see that we have a huge amount of reduction in that hard avoid area, which is obviously incredibly useful for controlling the off-site noise. We can also see that this green line, which is the good stuff, if this was music, these would be the good notes and these would be the bad notes. We can see that we have essentially a pretty solid result from getting the right frequency response and the sound pressure level slope that we determined within 2 dB pretty much across the whole spectrum. This is no software trickery, folks. This actually works. And just to show you what that actually means for the system response, we can see here the frequency response of the system with the SPL up the side here. And if you look in this window, this is not live software, these are screenshots, so I can't show you it moving. This white dot shows us at what point through the audience slice we're looking at the frequency response. And we can see, despite the fact that we've actually sacrificed some of the, I suppose, sonic purity, we still have a pretty solid curve. And we move on to the next slide. We are here at the back of that 100 meters of coverage. We've still got a pretty solid frequency response, although it's turned down significantly. And then finally, we're into the hard avoid area, and all we've got is this. So we are looking at some pretty serious levels of control, and we're cranking we're cranking up the hard avoid capabilities of the system, but we're not sacrificing the sonic performance, which is pretty useful. And not only is this the main left and right, we're able to do this with the entire system. So we've got 8 delays to play with the same amount of flexibility. So there's a degree of pre-planning obviously involved, but and obviously a good site survey is important, so that you know what you're dealing with, because the terrain is plays a big part in it too. Well, but let's perhaps look at how this might look actually on site. So I just need to mess with the screens here. Give me a second. So you should now be seeing an aerial view of the festival site, taken by Elon Musk. No, that's a lie. And an impressive site it is too. One of the most impressive things is the steel shield fence, which is this, which runs all the way around. It's 25 kilometers long or something. It's massive. Runs all the way around the site to make sure that ticket holders only, of course, not like the bad old days. So it's just to give you an overview, this is the Pyramid Arena here. Can you see my mouse? Si, can you see my mouse? Don't know. Hang on a minute. We have the other stage here, which is another loudspeaker manufacturer, so we won't talk about that. The Westholt stage is here. John Peel is this one up here. This is the Dance Village West. And then down in this area here, we have the southeast corner, which includes the Block 9 stuff, which we're going to be looking at later. But just to kind of give you an idea of what all of that we've just been talking about with the software really means, what we're going to do is actually lay that over the Pyramid Arena, and you can see how that translates into a kind of, well, a diagrammatic representation. Oh, apparently it's St. George's Day tomorrow, my computer tells me. Good luck with that, everybody. So, standby caller. You all tuned in to watch me work AutoCAD 2018 for Mac, which I can tell you is not pretty. Any of you AutoCAD users, if it's on a Mac, oh, what a nightmare. So if we start off with the main system, you can see how those green, red and blue areas translate into what's actually happening on the field. So here are the front of house positions. Hang on, let's just turn that off again and just make sure that you can understand what's on the field here. So we're looking at the main left, right. Hang on a minute, what's going on there? They've disappeared. Don't know. Check that out later. So the left, right hang here and here. The outfills on here and here. These are the infills in here. This is front of house sound, front of house lights. And then on the back of those, delays 2 and 3. This is 1, this is 4. Those are the 216 MLAC arrays. This is 5, 12 MLA, 6, another 12 MLA, and 7 and 8. Now, one of the things about this is you can see how the system, the actual sort of physical deployment of the system correlates to the shape of the field. The field is reckoned to hold, I think it's 115,000 people at capacity. In 2019, we added these 2 delays, which made a huge difference, because it had to be said that in these corners, or that corner particularly, you know, as these things go, that's always the place where the likes of Michael and Emily Evis and all the others, they come down from the farm, which is just at the top there, and they come and stand there and they listen. And we were suffering a bit from a lack of energy up there, despite the fact that these used to be MLA. And we're also getting quite a lot of doubling from multiple arrivals at these sort of extreme angles. So we pushed to actually have a redesign and get these extra delays into the field, and it's just made the most incredible difference. The coverage is just absolutely solid everywhere, and as the testament to that is for those engineers who actually make the effort to go and walk the field. We've had a lot of people come in and said, wow, you know, the coverage of this system is quite unlike anything I've ever heard on a festival site, which is nice to hear. So that's the way the system sits in the field. The kind of distances we're looking at, these are 180 meters away from downstage center. These are 150, these are 110, and these are about 79 or 80. We are beholden to various people for getting these things in the right position. And I've actually ended up buying a load of surveying equipment to make sure that it actually happens. Should have gone to college and learned to be a surveyor, but anyway, let's have a look at the system coverage. So this is the main left and right, and we're looking at it's actually slightly misleading because I've actually attached these to the front of the arrays, but that's not the case because the coverage starts just the other side of the barrier. But we're looking at the green areas here, reaching out to essentially the distance of the MLA compact arrays just beyond 100 meters. And what we're looking at here is in the red area, the coverage is falling away by 20 dB. And then we're looking at, in this case, in the hard avoid scenario, turning it down to about 45 dB by the time it gets right out to the back delays. So whilst these big arcs of color look like the sound everywhere, the bit we're really looking at is the green. Is what we're really, green and blue is what we're really interested in. The different arcs here are designed to give you a representation of how the SPL is working. The yellow triangles are the reference points, which we were looking at in the software. That is, if I just do this, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry. If I show you this, then that yellow triangle there corresponds to the yellow triangle here, which is the reference point around which we balance the SPL. So there's a 2 dB drop between the front of the coverage and the reference point, and then another 3 dB here, and then we're into the non-audience and hard avoid areas. So that's what we're looking at with the main arrays. We turn on the side hangs. I'm not entirely convinced I've got the angles of these right, but they are different. The optimizations are different. You can see that the hard avoid area is not so deep. Incidentally, it's worth just pointing out, if I zoom right out on this, the problem areas are all up around here. Obviously, it's, you know, it's the direction almost in which the stage is facing, as is always the case. So those are the areas that we're looking at actually controlling the off-site. Those are where all the measurement points are. But that's the main system, and the side hangs. We can obviously see we've got really solid coverage right the way across. And that is complemented by the infills, which if we zoom right in there, what I haven't mapped here is actually the downfills on the mains, which obviously give us wider coverage. And so the infills and the downfills, they all knit together really, really nicely to give us really solid, a really high energy, exciting experience right the way across in the expensive seats. Actually, they're the muddy seats because all of the farmyard sludge runs downhill, and it pools in the kind of, you know, in the mosh pit down here. Not that anybody's moshing to Dolly Parton, but hey, there's a first time for everything. So that's how the main system really sits on the site there. Yeah, it gives us a really solid, well-controlled, beautiful sounding wash across the entire arena, and by the time we get to the back, it's almost inaudible. So I'm not going to, what I'm going to do is turn these ones off, because we'll look now at the first ring of delays. Now these do a lot of work because these two here are, the 7 and 8 are designed to kind of get us right up the back of the field and give us really solid coverage, particularly during the day, because obviously with the atmospherics change, we have to deal with that, and very often we resort to a different optimization as the evenings draw in and the air gets cooler and stiller. But again, the same thing, we're looking at the coverage area, the non-audience, and then the hard avoids, and we've got a a really solid band of hardwood right the way across the back of the arena here. And you can see how also this is firing right up into this corner, which becomes supported by this. So we get really solid coverage right up into the into that area where people want to come and stand. People, you know, the golden lot. One thing that's worth mentioning is the production manager, Yasha, he has asked for a way of actually us and he knowing what kind of levels we're running at the back of the arena. And we, over the last couple of festivals, installed some remote monitoring systems with Chris Beale's SPL track, of which we have one here on the disabled platform. There's another one out on one of these delays and one at front of house. And Yasha can then sit in his office, which is here somewhere, and he can actually see what's going on. When this field gets full, it's a phenomenal body of, you know, seething humankind. And as I said earlier, when you're in amongst all of that, the levels and the energy of the system feels different. And I'd mentioned Dolly Parton just now. With Dolly Parton, I think they had the biggest crowd they've ever had, they reckon, in the field. And Dolly's not a particularly loud act, but you know, we need to be able to keep that energy right up, right the way to the very back. It's all about giving people an experience they remember. I mean, you know, it's not every day you get to see Dolly Parton in a field in Somerset, is it? So that's the first ring of delays sat there, and I'll add the new ones in here, which is 5 and 6. So we can see if I just turn the first ring off, actually. We've got a relatively, well, really short throw, actually, particularly on this one here, and a huge hard avoid area. So a lot of that processing power is going to actually making sure that we've got a real solid reduction at the back of the arena. And this one here points towards the acoustic tent, which is over, it's just off the map. But so that, you know, obviously interstage interference is another thing that is very much a part of the whole thing. With Pyramid, the acoustic stage is the only one really that's potentially affected by it. But it's a different situation on some of the other stages, which again we might get to talk about a bit later on. But yeah, that there you can see just how we've shortened the coverage in to contain it right inside this kind of, you know, inside the blue line, and make sure that we've, you know, there could be people sleeping in the tents that are here, for heaven's sake. We don't want to disturb them, do we? Even if it is Metallica or Foo Fighters or whatever. So, and we then add these, and you can see that we've got a similar situation where we are generating this solid hard avoid energy reduction right the way across the back of the arena. And as I said, the whole system is programmed to be able to adopt this SPL profile with a couple of clicks of a mouse. I mean, you can see with those last two, the delays 7 and 8, they perhaps, you know, arguably fall short of the back of the arena. Like I say, this is the hard avoid scenario. The sort of the standard running, I suppose, would be that these green areas would stretch out to the back here, and the whole hard avoid area would be further out. But we'd have that kind of. But this is kind of the I suppose the I can't think of the right word, but the scenario where we are reducing the offsite to the maximum, and it is extremely effective. We've achieved some fairly incredible results over the past few years. So stand by. I'll just do a little bit of button pushing here. My next slide says, let's ask Alexa. That was a joke. I can't remember what it meant. Oh, I know what it was, but ignore that. It's not even funny. Let's look at something else. This is something really rather different. A lot of you, if you regularly receive Martin Audio's press releases, you probably would have seen this. It was the it was one of the stages. It was new in 2019, and it was one of the things that got talked about a lot. Mostly because it's essentially a work of art more than anything else. This has been put together by the team at Block 9, who are a company who design and create immersive events in crazy places, and they are responsible for a couple of areas in the southeast corner which run all night. Icon it's about 20 meters high and is an enormous head with a 3D visor, which is projection mapped. And Gideon Berger, who is the head of the creative team, he wanted a sound system which I suppose was, yeah, well, it was up to the job to create this experience. I mean, the visual spectacle is mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. And they wanted a sound system that was going to reflect that. And we said, well, okay, look, why don't we do it in surround? So we came up with a 6.1 system, which based on a hexagonal arena shape, which is about 80 meters wide. It's worth just mentioning here that with one of my other hats on, I recently have been working with a great little company here in my hometown of Plymouth called Pyramid, and ironically, and we've been doing some fairly funky, award-winning home theatres, and I've been having a lot of fun with the audio. And as ever, I like to try and always find ways of joining gaps and between different disciplines. And you know, I thought, well, hey, this is at least 10 times the size, if not 20 times the size of most home theatres, maybe even bigger, 100 times the size, I don't know. But hey, let's do it. And of course, when you're dealing with a surround sound system that's essentially spread across an 80-meter area, there are going to be some issues, but we'll talk about that and how we dealt with that in a minute. First of all, let's check out what we used. So this was the first outing for Wavefront Precision Longbow. We had 6 arrays of 10 each, working on 2-box resolution. If you don't know what that is, then you need to watch more Martin Audio webinars. We had 32 SHX 218 subs. Basically, it was a copy of the pyramid array, subarray, just with the SHX 218s, which aren't powered in the same way that MLX are. Some WPM on the infills, and using the Icon 81 and 42 amplifiers as our lovely subarray. It's worth just mentioning also that the team who helped put all this together, Cy Purse, whose voice you heard at the beginning of this, was absolutely central to the whole thing. Lee Chance and Nicole Higgins, who ran the gig, did a fine job. And everybody else, Dom at Martin Audio, who ran around to make this happen. Like I said, this was the first outing really for WPL. And it was quite challenging, let's put it that way. So that's the hardware we're looking at. How do we make it work? Well, here's a very simplified plan of the arena. If you imagine that the head itself sits in here, we've got 6 arrays at 60-degree angles spread around the arena, subarray across here. Now, obviously, not everybody, purely because of the speed of sound, not everybody's going to be able to get a full 6.1 experience in every single bit of the arena. You know, far from it. We had to accept that. But what we thought we could do was, obviously, we create like a golden circle in the middle, but we were able to create a system that would give people a series of sound coming from different directions, a sense of sound coming from different directions, no matter where they were. And basically, within this area here, we were looking at people at least getting a sensational kind of not surround experience so much, but a kind of a multi-point experience that made sense. So obviously one of the difficulties in this situation is that if you have a loudspeaker array here and it's firing this way, by the time you get over here, you're hearing this one, and you're still going to be hearing this one, but significantly later, and you're going to get doubling. And this was obviously something that we had to think about very carefully. And what occurred to me was that we could use the optimization to reduce the level beyond the golden circle of so let's take this array, for example, to such that by the time you were here, you were hearing these 3, and you were getting a sense of movement within those 3, and not hearing the late arrivals from the arrays on the other side of the arena. So it meant we had to be very, very careful about making sure that the array height was exactly the same all around the arena. The ground was not flat, but it sloped away from right to left as you look at that plan. And we had to be very careful about how we optimized it. And in a kind of a similar way to what I showed you with Pyramid system, this is, hey, look, I've really struggled with this, okay? AutoCAD on a Mac is a nightmare. All the data I had for all of these stages is in AutoCAD. I was pulling my hair out for some reason, the drawings I had of Icon, trying to draw those coverage arcs into them in AutoCAD wasn't working. So I ended up using SketchUp, which of course worked first time. So it looks a bit different, but hopefully this will give you an idea of how we achieved making this system work coherently for everybody in the arena. So there we can see that we have that first array. We have if the optimization, if the reference point was here, we had a 1 dB drop from here to here, and then 4 dB across the middle. And that was applied to all the arrays. And then the non-audience and the harder voids are really cranked up to make sure that they dropped away sufficiently so that we weren't hearing doubling from this array over here. So it was a combination of the optimization of the output of the loudspeaker arrays, balancing the SPLs and the actual physical aiming of the arrays to make it work. I was about to say something really important there, but I can't remember what it was. But if we then add the others as we go around the circle, you can see how that the green areas and the sort of greeny pink areas, which is what we're concerned about, are coming together really nicely. Oh, I know what it was. Yeah, some maths. So I also thought that, okay, one of the things about this was that Mendip Council were pulling their hair out. They're doing their nut about this stage because it was a massive system that was new and it hadn't been done before. And it was like, oh, people are going to be awake all night because it's going to be really loud. One of the great things about having a system like this is that obviously you are looking at 6 loudspeaker arrays all firing into the same physical space, which means that the cumulative SPL addition is quite significant. If, for instance, we were running these at 98, with a random phase addition, we'd be looking at about 105 in the middle. And with the harder voids, we obviously all around the outside as well, the sensation of walking into the arena was quite incredible. The amount of, you know, the energy within it compared to what was outside it was astonishing. And the other issue was that over behind the stage, there was actually this is the edge of the festival site, and there's a farmhouse literally just off the top of the page there, which was another concern. Actually, that's worth mentioning at this point. This isn't just about loudspeakers. It's also about working with people to try and advise them in using our knowledge and our expertise to try and advise them with the construction and design and planning of ways to actually achieve the results that they want. What we actually did was underneath, in the staging that the whole thing actually sat on, behind the subarray, we actually filled under the deck with industrial sandbags, which we also do on the other Block 9 stage. We do the Genesis stage, which is a massively effective way of actually controlling the low frequency output behind the stage, and especially when you've got an array that big. Even though it's a cardioid array, you basically almost eliminate, you know, you can virtually eliminate everything that's going backwards just by working with people and saying, look, if you do this, if you incorporate that into the build or the schedule, then you know you're going to get the amount of energy that you're looking to achieve. So another thing that's worth talking about here, very much worth talking about, is how we actually approached the actual setup of this, the actual driving of it. What this picture doesn't show you is actually, because I was fed up with drawing arcs by this time, the left and right, we actually threw the left and right about 10 or 15 meters further into the back of the field. And we kind of set these up as delays, really, but because they're facing into the arena, they're still acting as creating this immersive sound field. So the whole system was essentially coherent, because these are the wide left, right, and the rear left, right were actually time aligned back to the main arrays. So we timed this back to this, and then timed these to these, and we found a point where that really sat nicely, although it did take a little while, I have to be said, because hey, we'd not done this before, okay, on a scale this big. So those of you who might be thinking, "That'll never work, it's all out of time," that's how we achieved that. And the other thing we did is that we use one of these, which is a Trinov altitude 32 high-end cinema pressure, like it says on the screen there. Don't you just hate it when people just read off their presentations? And I can't see who's online, but if Tom Garrett is online, Tom, thanks for sorting this out, because it worked a treat. It's all very well having a 6.1 system, but when you've got a DJ on stage, you get a stereo output, and that's it. Excuse me a minute. Bit of lubrication there, it's just water. What we needed to do was make the system work in a much more surround kind of way. Now, I've had my head turned by Trinov's approach to immersive audio significantly, both through my home theatre work and also using some of their equipment for live too. However, I'd never done it with one of these. This is what you may regard as an AV receiver. It's much more than that, but you can plug an HDMI cable in the back of this and video comes out of it, put it that way. Not in our case. What this has is some really great upmixing codecs in it. So we basically say, look, here's a 6.1 system, we stick stereo into it, and I don't know how it does it, and I've been trying to find out, but it takes that signal and very effectively turns it into a very convincing surround mix. And I think what it really is looking at frequency content, and it's looking at time too, I think. But it is quite remarkable what you can achieve with it. What comes with that is one of these, which is a 4-capsule measurement microphone. And that enabled us to very precisely calibrate the SPL equalization and other parameters. And also, although I can't remember if we actually used this, I don't think we did in the end, but you can also virtually adjust the loudspeaker positions. Because you have the 4 capsules on the microphone, you're able to get very accurate positional phase relationships between the loudspeaker sources, and it can analyze it in such a way to make adjustments to that and virtually reposition the loudspeakers. It's quite incredible. And this gives you an idea of what it's doing. So we're looking at, what are we looking at here? We're looking at impulse response at the bottom, so it really cleans up the impulse response, which gives you great imaging. We're looking at phase response, so this is before and after impulse, before and after response, and before and after amplitude. Yeah, that doesn't look quite right. Anyway, those are the kind of things that you're getting out of it, and it's very flexible and exciting, actually. Did it work? Well, it was widely regarded as the most exciting addition to the festival in years. We were able to run at full level all night. Like I said, the council were dubious, but we properly nailed it. There's a noise map of what was going on with it. Obviously, you know, to an extent, atmospherics are always an issue in these things, but it was inaudible off-site. So it's a resounding yes. Just to clarify, the late night conditions are such that no one single sound source should be audible off-site above the general hum of the festival. Yeah, this was inaudible. They couldn't distinguish this at all from any of the other stuff that was going on. So yes, a resounding yes. It worked very, very well indeed, and we all felt very pleased with ourselves. So that was Icon, a really interesting project, which we're hoping is going to be there's going to be more of that seen in the future. Just to finish off, just going to have a look at Westholtz. Westholtz is kind of the third stage at Glastonbury. There's a lot of esoteric world music acts. It used to be called Jazz World back in the day. But yeah, it's Westholtz is the farm area. It's this area of the farm that we're looking at. And what we did in 2019 was redesign the system to accommodate the stage moving. But this was done. We had problems in the past with this stage, which was interfering with this area up here, which is a backstage for theatre and circus, where they're all very chilled, and you know, they don't want to be hearing Billie Eilish at 100 dB when they're trying to chill out from doing their trapeze act, after doing their trapeze act. But also we had down off the map here is the Greenfields area, where you can go and have Reiki and sound baths and things like that. And off the bottom left-hand corner is Greenpeace, and we all know what Greenpeace are all about, and bless them. And then over here, there's a large market. Now the stage, you can see the old stage position here, and the PA basically just fired straight down the field. This is about 120 meters to the back, 110 meters. We had 2 hangs of 20 MLAC on there in the past, and yeah, I mean, it worked well, but in collaboration with the production team, in order to overcome some of these problems, moving the stage gave us the opportunity to redesign the system with MLA, which is obviously narrower, and we put in some compact delays, 16 deep, raised up high and pointing down, and hey presto, well, the MLA was optimized to give us a hard void around here, and we were able to run the stage at unprecedented levels with really rock solid coverage all the way through the festival. Theatre and circus were happy. The sound bath people were happy. Greenpeace were happy. Everybody was happy. Big smiles all around, and that's what we want. So that's what you can do. I think it's a matter of teamwork, working with people to help them understand what the sound is actually doing, and coming forward with suggestions to actually try and improve the experience for everybody, not just the audience standing in front of the stage and the system itself. I've been talking for an hour and a quarter. That's probably far too long. So anybody got any questions? Si, you there? Have you gone to sleep?
No, I'm still here. Very good.
silence came just in reply.
Hopefully you can see the question sort of little drop down menu. Hopefully that's something you can see on your on the actual control panel. If you pull that out, you'll be able to stretch it out and you can see some of the questions some people have been asking. Me and Ben have been trying to answer a few of them, but I'm sure you'll be able to elaborate.
Si, you're on.
Oh, I'm on, am I? All right. Fair enough. Show my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. You're there, Si.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Well, thank you, Simon. Brilliant, and a good way of kind of presenting a lot of what you do in quite a tangible and understandable way. Felt like I was back at uni for a minute there. So we have a few questions. Let's have a look. I think a lot of these questions you answered, to be honest, Simon, but has anybody got any other questions that they'd like me to ask Simon?
Everybody except John Hibb did. She's not allowed to ask any questions because he's a lampy. That's if he made it out of his pit.
So okay, so the few questions come through.
I'm not seeing those.
Well, this is an interesting question from George. If you were forced into a time machine by some men in balaclavas, what system would you deploy on Pyramid Stage in 1990?
In 1990? Is that George Beebe by any chance?
It is.
It is. Oh, George, well, what I would have deployed was probably that thing that you've got. I'd have taken that down there and used that. You know, you've got some funny old pile of old cardboard and wood and magnets. I'll use that. In 1990, it probably would have been a Renkes-Hines system. I reckon.
Hopefully that answers a question.
M1 system.
Another question. In surround PA, we face a lot of comb filtering from Sunvendi. I hope I've got your name right there.
Who's this, sorry?
Well, do we have problems with comb filtering in surround systems? I would say it's a bit different because of the different signals, but do you want to elaborate on that, Simon?
Well, you kind of want comb filtering in a way, but the fact is that using the upmixer, the Trinov to upmix, you don't actually end up with the same signal coming out of each array. So the comb filtering, to an extent, is nullified by that. And you also, for the low frequencies, the really low frequencies, obviously we've got a single source, a large subarray. So of course there's comb filtering, but we were able to optimize the system in a way to be able to minimize the effects of that. And using the upmixer as well, it helped us to actually deal with that in a very effective way. Does that answer the question?
Well, I think that's a good answer.
You were there. What do you think? Questions
on how do you feed the delays? So the delays left, right, and main system. I think from memory you had like a master sort of say console at front of house on Pyramid. Is that correct?
What are we talking about? Pyramid here?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a matrix console which spits out left, right, main left, right, sub, and fills, I think, or maybe maybe even main, left, right, and sub. And then there's a matrix to receive all the console inputs, and a master console which drives the system and gives the audio signal to the system management. So what we do is we give areas of the field stereo where it works, and other areas of the field we don't. But yeah, I mean, it's a combination of using the system optimization is handled by ViewNet, but the system drive itself is Lake, and that's how the system distribution, the signal distribution to the system is done via Dante over fiber. If that answers that question.
That's a pretty good sort of routing platform. I think a lot of people are using Lakes at front of house and stuff for distribution, and there's a lot of consoles at front of house at pyramid stage anyway, all doing their own sort of different.
Yeah, I mean the way that works is there's a flip flop AB house console, so two consoles which are SD12s these days, and we offer the people the opportunity to come and put sessions in or send sessions through prior to get themselves, you know, if it works for them, up to speed. A lot of artists obviously bring their own consoles, and we try and get people plugged up as early as we possibly can, and then they can line check behind the curtain. We roll them out, plug them back in again, and off they go.
Cool. Thank you, Simon. Another question from James. With regards to the harder void areas, how much is down to the mechanical aiming and how much is down to the processing to reduce the SPO? I think
it's a combination of the two. I mean, you can see in a lot of the pictures the arrays are quite high, and I mean, obviously, what we're dealing with is you know, it's a long line of speakers. And by default, that spits out a defined vertical beam, which and you're always going to get a better result if the system is pointing in the right place to start with. But so what we do, I mean, the delays are on 15-meter towers, and I mean, on the Westholt system in particular, I don't have any pictures of it, strangely, but on the Westholt system, the delays are cranked right back, and you know, there's probably about 15 or more degrees of down tilt. But so it's a combination of the two. And you know, with a standard system, obviously you'd aim it down and you'd achieve what you achieved. With an optimizable system like this, where you have the software is feeding back the actual, you know, you can see the output, the software and the coverage that you ask the system to do in the software determines exactly how the arrays behave. So you are, you know, if you point them in the right direction in the first place, then you're always going to get a better result. But that said, you can, to an extent, to a great extent, actually, sometimes, let's just say, bend the rules somehow, and you can get coverage to go where you wouldn't normally think it would go.
cool. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think your best bet is always pointing the speaker in the right direction, and then the software.
Call me old-fashioned, but yeah.
Yeah, but the software kind of takes over to give you additional control from that point. So you're always better off pointing the speaker in the right place, but the DSP will kind of get you out of the hole sometimes and equally give you more control. Cool. So question from Alex. what criteria do you use for deciding where to place the delay towers? So have you positioned them because of the throw distance from the main PA, or is there another coverage kind of issue you consider?
God Almighty, you know what? So long ago that this design was actually first mooted that I can't really remember. It's based around I think it was primarily when we first put the longbow system in. We were looking at basically how far it would throw before we needed delays. I mean, the delay configuration has changed a bit over the years, but yeah, we were looking at around about 110 meters were the first row delays. The central ones have now pulled back to be integrated into the front of house towers and the front of house compounds. But it kind of looks right, and as well, and when you look at it, when you look at that map, that plan view of the field, you can kind of see that there are. I mean, the criteria are, I think, understanding what's possible with your loudspeaker system, and also you have to take into account things like sight lines. I mean, the pyramid stage is just an open field, but there are a couple of trees in it here and there. I mean, one of the delays is positioned by the tree so it doesn't obstruct the sight lines more than it would, than necessary, I suppose. But that is actually just coincidence. I'm not sure if that really answers your question, but it's a matter of knowing primarily what your system is capable of, and then considering things like balancing. So if for instance you were expecting the main left-right system to throw 150 meters, which it will, you can do that, but you are obviously going to run it harder to achieve that. It's really about, I mean, when you look at those coverage arcs on that plan, it's about overlapping. It's about getting the delays to move together seamlessly. But one of the great things about these systems is that we can manipulate the SPL output of the array so that you walk through from one to the other with almost no change in level whatsoever. I mean, obviously that's, everybody can do that, but it's about understanding what your system's capable of and what the site actually requires, and whether or not people are prepared to dig the trenches.
Yeah, I remember that day in 2016 where 5 people were stuck in a ditch for a very long time. But
yeah, it happened again in 2019 as well.
I'm glad I was on a different stage.
Yeah, exactly.
I've also, just to add to that, I think this is a stage that Simon's been working on for several years, and it's sort of developed over time. With the addition last year with the additional delay location. So this is something that a lot of people have put a lot of love into, and it hasn't sort of just happened overnight with people saying, "Oh, we're going to put the speakers there." It's based on sort of a lot of experience and sort of testing over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everybody talks about the pyramid stage because it's such a kind of an iconic thing, but the fact is that you could be forgiven for actually saying, what, festival experience, blah, I'm 150 meters away from the stage and it's not really engaging, but my God, this is engaging all the way to the back, and it really is quite incredible what in that number of people in a field that size, it's astonishing how involving it is all the way to the very back, and the fact that we've managed to achieve that and keep the noise police happy is a testament to the technology. It's a testament to the people and the willingness to work cooperatively to achieve that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think there's a lot of people working towards that goal. And we do have another question from Stephen. Where can I get more information about sub-configuration for noise pollution?
Right. Yeah, we didn't really talk about that because I couldn't get my sub diagrams to work. Maybe, I mean, rather than me, because if I started talking about that now, it'd probably take quite a long time. But maybe, Si, if you want to see if you can sort them out with some of that information, how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of weeks back, I actually did a webinar on low frequency system design, which talks about broadside arrays and broadside cardioid arrays that in the same kind of orientation that we had at Premium Stage and on the Icon stage. So that's up on the website at martin-audio.com/training, I think it is, but it will also be on YouTube as well. So there's a lot of information on there. Are there any other questions? I'm just conscious that Simon's been talking for probably quite a long time.
I've got nothing else to do. Hey, it's lockdown. I'm here all day.
Here all day. So without the Trinov, is there any other way to handle the system without experiencing comb filtering?
My immediate answer to that is that I don't know. I mean, yes is almost certainly the answer, but I mean, one thing I will say about that is that what you have to understand is that at no point did we ever have, and this was always the intention, there was no point did we ever have the same audio signal going through all 6 arrays. But what we, during showtime that is, but what we did have, and I think Si, I mean, like I say, I mean, you were heavily involved in this. What we did have was the ability to optimize the system in such a way that the interference, the destructive interference, which was not so much about cone filtering, it was more about arrival times, was as good as unnoticeable, I would say. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the issues we had or that we overcame were much more about arrival times, as you say, than any issues with coverage. Simply because, like you said, we had different signals coming out of each of the arrays at any one time, so there wasn't any kind of coherent cone filtering as such. Because, well, it's not a perfect world, but I guess you could say that each of the signals were kind of incoherent in their own independent way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it really did work. I think we played with delay times in each of the towers to kind of expand the kind of sweet spot in the center.
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned earlier, just because of the sheer size of the thing, we were initially having sort of arrival time issues between like one side to the other, but we ironed them out as best we could, and then it really sounded quite amazing in the middle. I think in the end, after hearing that that golf rap song when we first turned it on, I think it was one of the most amazing things I've probably really heard. But it was just very ethereal, wasn't it? It's a beautiful track to hear at that kind of level, I think.
That was astonishing. It was a bit of a moment, that, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think after a few days in the rain, making a couple of Cat5 cables and such, it was nice when the sun came out, and as a beautiful track to stand there and listen to. But Yeah, it was. I don't think we had any comb filtering issues as such, and I don't think that really kind of it wasn't something we were really concerned by, um, like walking around in terms of coverage.
I mean, the thing is, you know, as soon as you start pointing speakers at each other, comb filtering is going to exist. I mean, that's how stereo works. It's, but it's at the same time, it's something that we were able to optimize the output of the arrays in such a way that, and also balance the SPL output of them in such a way in that moving from one array to another was, you know, it was as seamless as it could ever be, I think. And I mean, you're always going to get a bit of comb filtering, but let's be honest, right? This is a late night dance stage, and the last thing people care about is comb filtering when you're off your head on whatever you might be off on, and all you want to do is dance.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. So to answer this question from Mars, and hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly there. Why did we use the Trinov and not the Martin Audio Astro system? So the Astro is
it's a different thing.
Yeah, it's a very different thing, and it's much more about creating content, I guess, for an Astro system, whereas this Trinov kind of just ticked away in the background and did its work for us, rather than us having to sort of actively create content and then produce it in this 6.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, yeah. I mean, the Astro is exactly that. I mean, Astro is a creative tool. The Trinov is more of a processor, and as such, yeah. I mean, if you use the Trinov in its home environment, you know, it's in a nice warm, dry cupboard, doing funky things for cinema loudspeakers, you know. So Astro, I mean, to be honest, I don't know if we would have been able to achieve the same kind of thing with Astro in this particular case. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
No, I would agree. I think I'm sure you could probably achieve a similar result if you had sat down with the performer and then created that content.
Yeah.
As the trainer upmixes it for you in a kind of a set regimented way. Whereas if we had the Astro system set up, we would be able to physically move sounds around, which wasn't something that we really wanted to get involved with.
No, well, what this does is it raises the whole issue of using immersive systems live, and the fact is that it's all about the content. And if you can get artists to engage, and I think as an industry we need to find ways of achieving this, but getting artists to engage with the technology to enhance their performance like this and deliver a much more exciting result, you know, you're going to get some pretty incredible stuff going on. I mean, just as an example, I mean, I mentioned Greenpeace when we were talking about Westholtz, but Greenpeace had a sound installation which was all about, the main thrust of it was about bees. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing. It was made of wood. I can't remember who did the installation, but forgive me. But it was a lovely, lovely thing. But it was quite, you know, it's quite a quiet experience. But you know, that content was created to be played back through a surround sound system, whereas somebody doing a DJ set, it's it's bang it up, let's go a lot of the time, and it's stereo and get on with it. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff at festivals where we'd be doing dance stages with four stacks, maybe more, or nothing like on this kind of scale. And the system is kind of, it's stereo, and then it's stereo the other way around, which doesn't ultimately matter that much unless somebody's actually, being creative in the stereo domain. But again, I mean, all that really does is give you the ability to generate a more intense sound field, without quite so much physical sound power being generated from two sources, and you've got four sources generating less. And it's really, we have to find, what I'm trying to say is we have to find ways of getting artists to engage with immersive audio in ways that there are people out there doing it. Martin Ware, who I know is somebody who's been doing this for quite a while. Bjork's been doing it. And there are a lot of people, I mean, obviously Pink Floyd were doing it in the 70s. And they would, running it all off tape, they'd run stuff into their surround, and also a joystick for various things to move around the arenas. But getting people to understand the possibilities is something that we need to achieve as an industry, and offer the opportunities for people to come and develop them. Everybody's gone to sleep now, haven't
they? Still going. So, has anyone else got any other questions? What songs do you use to sound check?
That old chestnut.
Babylon Sisters is your favorite, isn't it, Sam?
Oh, you know what? I love Babylon Sisters, but I never ever use it to sound check with, because I've worked with Chris Eakers too much in the past, and he uses it all the time. What songs do I use to sound check? A lot of it depends on my mood at the time, the situation, how much time I've got. But as a go-to, I've probably got about 3 or 4. One is Happiness is Easy by Talk Talk off the Colour of Spring album. What else? Bullets by Tongue, which is just a really beautiful sounding record. Some Goldfrapp. Again, it depends on really on the application. But often I'll just play something that I really like, and if it moves me when I play it through a system, then I know the system's in the ballpark. Tears for Fears, No,
I think that's a good comment there. Like, if you feel the hairs on the back of your neck go up, then you know you're pretty much there.
I mean, there are certain tracks which have certain characteristics. I mean, I mentioned Tears for Fears, the Seeds of Love album, which is just astonishing in every respect. But I mean, there are, particularly Roland's voice and Lita Adams' voice at times, when that as a kind of a vocal reference, that, if there's any harshness in the system, that's going to show you that. There's some classical music I use as well. Sometimes the second movement of Beethoven's Ninth In particular, there's a Berlin Philharmonic recording of that I use sometimes. And if if it's loud, there's a bit on that with the timpani. If if you're going to kind of, the timpani have got that kind of attack, that the system's dynamically right. Max Richter sometimes if I'm feeling mellow. I don't like being prescriptive. There's a quote that I read years ago, which was Peter Gabriel, and he said, "I make my life difficult." And I have to say that when it comes to audio, a lot of the time I'm kind of similar. If it means that the end result is something that is going to move people, and if doing something unusual, difficult, not been done before, I say bring it on. I can't. And one of the reasons that I kind of sometimes struggle with things like touring is that it's very often very easy to get stuck in a rut. And every time I walk into a new venue, if we're bringing our own system in, it's like, okay, what can we do in here that's going to make a real difference? Rather than go, oh, left, right, bang, get on with it. Side hangs, yeah, whatever. Oh, can't be asked. It's come on, let's let's actually look at this and what can we actually do that's going to really wind the riggers up. But no, I mean, it sometimes it means taking chances, but if we don't, then we become really stale, especially at my age.
Oh, you're not getting on that much yet, Simon. Another question. Any experience on Indian classical music shows? I definitely personally don't, but I don't know about you, Simon.
Yes, I have to say. I have. Not for a very long time, but yes. I've been involved in various mellas and things like that in the past. And exciting, very exciting they are too. But no, show me a tambour and I'll show you a good time.
That's just what they say about you, Simon.
Sorry, I don't mean the tambour, I mean a santur.
Cool. Any more questions? I think we probably, we must have answered quite a few. If there
We've been on the air for nearly 2 hours.
Yeah, it's been a good talk actually. Okay, well, I guess I just need to say, if you have any other questions, then please just email me or any of my colleagues at technical@martin-audio.com. We'll be pleased to answer any of your questions, or definitely try and answer them as best we can in Simon's stead. Our next webinar
is this afternoon. It's later.
Oh yes, we actually have another webinar with Simon this afternoon at 4 p.m. if anyone wants to listen again. There will be a recording of this available at some point in the next day or two once we've sort of processed it.
Yeah, I need some very specific reverb requirements.
Oh yes, don't worry. If we send you a master, maybe you can EQ it for us.
We've got to upmix it at 6.1, don't we, first?
But after that, the next webinar will be with me doing our VNet control software. We're going to go through everything that is VNet, from network connectivity, generally how you sort of crack on with controlling a system with our proprietary control software. So yeah, great. Well, thank you very much, Simon. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to come and listen to me prattle on.